Hey everybody, it's Chris from Rottweiler Performance, and today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful KTM 690 even more badass than it already is. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Rottweiler Garage, and today we're going to show you how to install the Rottweiler Intake Kit on this 2019 KTM 690. The tools are pretty basic. You can pretty much do it with the tools that come with the bike. The reason this install is slightly different from the other years is they've changed the seat bracketry a number of times, and so we've adjusted for that in this new kit. So before we dive in, here's the tools you're going to need for the job. 2mm hex, 4mm hex, 5.5mm socket, 10mm open end wrench, T30 Torx, T20 Torx, flathead screwdriver, and a pair of zip tie cutters. Okay, the first few steps are pretty basic. We're gonna strip off the seat and remove some bodywork so we can extract the stock airbox and pitch that thing in the trash. There are some downloadable PDFs on our website that you can find on our download/instructions page that has a bit more detail than this, but they pretty much mirror this video right now. Okay, the first step is gonna be removing the seat. Next thing we're going to do is remove these panels. So KTM's been nice enough to allow these to be removed by hand. So right here we're going to grab this ridge, just pop it out. The rear pops up and it just pushes forward like that. Now we're going to be using a T30 Torx and removing these 3 screws from the seat support surrounding the airbox right here. None of these screws will be reused. Next step, we're going to remove these black shrouds right here on either side. Now, one thing that I want to clue you guys in on is the right side has 4 bolts, the left side has 5 bolts. There's a hidden one right behind this toolbox here, okay? So when you gather the bolts back together and you go to put these back on, don't freak out that you think you lost 1 bolt. These are going to see 4 pairs and then 1 odd bolt. So that 1 odd bolt goes on the left here. The tools you'll need for these two are a T30 Torx and a T20. There's 1 more bolt up here in front of the radiator, so you got to get at it from the front. Now the last thing you need to do is up behind here, there is a little plug that can be removed by hand, and the shroud is off. Okay, now that we've removed the right side, we're going to do the left. The only difference is this 1 bolt here. The right side does not have that. So there's 1 extra bolt on this side, and it's right behind where the tools are kept. That's it. And once all the bolts are out, this side just pops right off, just like that. Okay, now we're going to remove the key cover. Same thing as the rest of the snaps, it just comes right off. We're going to remove the seat supports in the front. This is basically just to help get the airbox out, give some clearance to the airbox. These are real easy. You don't need a wrench on the pieces. They do give you some flats right here. So if you're having trouble and it's spinning or there's some Loctite on it, you can use a 13mm wrench, but for the most part, we haven't had an issue with that. Now we're going to remove the regulator here, and the only reason is so we can get to the lower front airbox bolts. So these are 2 T30 Torx. I'm going to take these guys out. So while we're here, we're going to remove the front right airbox bolt. You might want to get a magnet for this one. Sometimes you can get them out, sometimes you can't. So right now we can't get it out, so we're just going to use a magnet and pull that guy out. While we're also on this side, we're going to remove the right rear airbox bolt. We're going to remove the same bolts on the other side. Now we're going to cut the breather line zip tie right here, remove that, and pull this hose off. So there's 2 hose clamps on this. There's one that's on the airbox and there's one on the throttle body. You're going to want to loosen the one forward of the second one. So it's basically the one on the throttle body. If you loosen the one in the rear, the velocity stack is going to want to pull out from the airbox when you take it off. So make sure you get the forward hose clamp. And all you need to do is loosen that until it starts to spin freely on the boot. Next, we're going to remove the temperature sensor from the airbox, which is just a button push like that, and you can slide it off. If it doesn't come completely off, you can take the rest of it off when you lift up the airbox. But as you can see, I just got it right there. Push that aside, and then we're also going to remove the electrical connections from the ECU. And this is going to allow the airbox to be pulled back a little bit further than normal. You can pull the ECU out if you'd like, so we can take that out just to give you a little bit more room to work when the airbox pops out. Okay, the next thing we're going to be working on right here is disconnecting the airbox hose from the SAS valve. Now, with the Rottweiler intake system, we don't provide a way for this same hose to reconnect to the intake, because most people who do the intakes, they also do a muffler. And if you do a muffler and remove the catalytic converter, there's no point in having this on the bike. So we don't allow for a provision for it. That being said, if you want to keep the SAS system intact, all you have to do is trace the hose that's on the top of this and put a small filter on it anywhere you want. That will feed the exhaust port with oxygen and keep air entering into the exhaust system. So for the purposes of this video, we're going to be removing this hose from the system right here. So we're going to cut that zip tie and pull it out and extract this hose so that when we remove the airbox, it will also pull out with it. Okay, now we're going to be physically removing the stock airbox. Everything has been loosened, all the bolts have been taken out. You just got to basically get a grip of it and pull upwards and it'll pop, just like that. Once it pops, you can start to pull it out. And some of these hoses you'll see, they're kind of slick. They just need to kind of pull out from the frame. You might have to twist the airbox a little bit. And the stock airbox is out. So at this point, we're going to be reusing two of the stock bolts that held the airbox in and reinserting them in the front like this and taking two of the nylock nuts from the Rottweiler intake kit and fastening them on the inside. And this is basically to hold the shrouds and keep them from being loose on the bike. Now we're just going to repeat this step on the right side. Now we're going to remove the temperature sensor, and this is a T20 Torx. You won't reuse these bolts. Okay, at this point we're going to remove the crankcase breather from the stock airbox. This is the one on the right-hand side of the box. We're going to leave the other one alone. There's a couple different ways to do this. You can come in from the inside if you remove the stock filter and help coax it out by hand. Or you can kind of dig a screwdriver in there. For this purpose, we're going to kind of do a little bit of both. So you can put a screwdriver in like that. You can kind of work your way in and then turn around and just pry it out like that. They're pretty tough, but you just want to be careful not to poke a hole in it if you do it that way. Otherwise, use your fingers from the inside. So at this point, we're going to start assembling some of the pieces of hardware to the base plate of the Rottweiler intake system. So some of this consists of the crankcase breather that we removed and some other pieces of hardware that will come in the kit. So we're going to walk you through some of that assembly right now. Next, you're going to locate the 6x16mm bolts. If you don't have a caliper, it's the second longest set in the group of parts. We're going to insert them from the logo side of the plate through to the pocketed side. Then you're going to locate the nylon washers, and these washers have little teeth in them, and you want to make sure that the teeth are pointed towards the plate, and then put them over the bolts like that, and that will hold the bolt in. Move to the second bolt, repeat the same step. Now you're going to locate the crossmember bracket and two nylon nuts that come in the kit. Place the crossmember over the studs like that. Thread on the nylock nuts, and you're going to snug them but not tighten them. You still want movement in this, but you don't want all this play. Once the nut starts to tighten down, just back it off just a little bit so you can still move the bracket. Repeat the same step on the next one. Now we've got a little bit of movement in that bracket. Okay, now we're going to locate the Viton O-ring that comes in the Rottweiler kit, and we're going to get it over this velocity stack on the tapered side. Now this can be a little bit tricky sometimes because it wants to roll off and it'll end up in the recesses of this velocity stack, which is designed to keep water out of the intake. So it might take you a couple tries. If they get twisted when they roll on, they try to twist off. So in this take, we're going to show you a method with a screwdriver. So you can kind of lay it on the top and hold it on the bottom and just work a screwdriver around a couple of times. And there we go. We've got it to stay where it is. Sometimes they'll try to roll up off in there, but this time looks like we got it. Okay, now we're going to get the velocity stack and put it through the base plate. So we're going to look for the side with a recess. That's the side that's on the pocketed side. And we're going to put the velocity stack through there just like this. Once it's through, you want to rotate it until the holes line up. As soon as the holes line up, we're going to start putting in the bolts. So you're going to locate these 3mm flathead screws and start putting them in like this. One trick you can use while putting on the nuts to hold these in is just give a twist to this velocity stack, and that'll put some tension on the bolts, and now we can start putting on the nuts. Now we're going to get the 5.5mm socket and the 2mm Allen and start to tighten everything up. Okay, now you're going to find the temperature sensor that you removed from the stock Airbox, and we're going to put it in the bottom of the plate. In our kit, we include an extra O-ring because we've seen some stock Airboxes come without this O-ring. So if you want to replace what you have, or if it doesn't have one at all, you can use ours. At that time, put the O-ring on, then locate the 5x12mm self-locking bolts, and we're going to put the temperature sensor in the bottom of the Rottweiler plate. You're going to want to find the locking tab for the connection and point it towards the outside. If you've purchased a crankcase blanking kit, which you can on this bike, now would be the time to insert it. It would go in here and you wouldn't use this hose. For the purposes of this video, we're going to insert the hose and show you how. So you just want to start working it in like this. Pretty self-explanatory. You can use a screwdriver. It's pretty tough rubber, and you can start using a screwdriver to coax the rubber through. Now we've got it installed properly and we're ready to attach the intake boot. You're going to want to find one of the hose clamps and put it over the boot like that. Get the boot on the velocity stack, and you're going to want to point it in line with the base plate. As soon as you have it eyeballed as best you can, now we're going to want to tighten this. So find a home between two of these nuts and begin to tighten the hose clamp. Okay, now that we've got the base plate assembly all put together, we're going to show you how to drop it into the frame and what to be prepared for. Okay, now that we have the whole assembly above the frame, the first thing we're going to do is locate the temperature sensor and plug that back in. Okay, now that that's plugged in, we're going to take the crankcase breather and route it through the frame right in this triangle area right here above all the cables. As soon as you get to the elbow, you can stop. Now we're going to locate the hose clamp and put it over the boot with the screw pointing to the left-hand side of the bike on the bottom side. This is going to give you the best access once it's on the bike. Keeping that from falling off, we're going to slowly lower this in the frame and get the boot over the back of the throttle body. It'll slide right on, and now we're ready for the next step for the seat brackets. Now take the crankcase breather tube, put it back over the plug, and put a new zip tie on it, like that. Now we're going to install the seat support brackets. So locate one bracket, locate an aluminum spacer, and then locate the longest of the button head bolts. Put those together and start threading the first bolt here. You can snug that down, and then we're going to install the second two bolts. there, and there. You can tighten everything at this point. Okay, now we're going to start putting the bolts through the cross member from the seat brackets. Now this part can be a little bit tricky. You can use a piece of tape on the back side of a open end wrench, or you can just do it with your finger like this. You can also pre-assemble this assembly before you drop it into the frame. That's another method of threading these pieces together. But once that bolts in, you can come in from the back side with an open end wrench like that and tighten it down. But we're going to leave them loose at this time. So what you want to do is make sure that everything is situated happily within the frame. Now we've gotten the base plate as low as we can in the frame, and what we want to do is make sure that the ear over here is not touching the frame and not touching the subframe support back here. So once we're happy where it's at, this looks really good, we're going to start tightening some of the hardware. So we're going to start with these 4 bolts here, and then we're going to move down to the intake boot below. Okay, now we're going to want to position the hose clamp towards the end of the intake boot and tighten it. All right, at this point in the installation, if you've opted for a Rottweiler storage bag, now would be the time to put it in. These little babies are really popular. Most people get them with the intakes, and when you install our intake, it frees up enough space in the front of the bike where the stock Airbox used to be to give you about 3/4 of a gallon worth of storage. So really at this point, all you do is drop it in the frame like so, and you're going to just zip tie it to the frame, and now you've got some really valuable and hidden storage space. Now we're going to reinstall the seat supports. You can use a 13mm wrench if it's thin enough on these flats, but most often you can just tighten them down, and they'll tighten down just fine. Now we're going to reinstall the key cover. This just snaps on, and then we're going to put the regulator rectifier back on to its mounts. Now we're going to reinstall the right-hand shroud, and you're going to locate this snap right here, and it's going to go into the frame like this, and that'll help you locate a lot of the screws. So we're going to bring that in, it'll snap right in, and all the rest will start to locate. Now don't forget that the left-hand shroud has 1 extra screw. Now the extra bolt that's on the left side is going to go right here. If you've removed the stock ECU, now's the time to plug it back in. You're going to start with the left-hand plug first, then the right-hand plug, then you're going to drop it down onto its keepers, and that's it. All right, guys, you've hung with us this far. We've gotten into the home stretch. We've got the base plate on. We've got the bodywork on. We're looking good, and now we're to the best part of the entire system, and that is the Rottweiler filter itself. So for this video, we didn't oil this, so I don't get oil all over my delicate hands. But in every kit comes a set of instructions that is very detailed on how to do that. Follow those, and then you can join back with us on this video right now so we can show you how to get this guy on so we can get out and ride. Underneath the filter, you're going to find this locking tab right here. This locking tab registers underneath the left-hand side of the base plate and locks the left-hand side on, and then you'll rock the filter over. So when you oil this, make sure you oil the base right here with the same filter oil that you use on the foam, and that will also help seal it, but it will seal regardless. So we're going to drop the filter down, and you want to shift it over to the left, push it down, and then shift it to the right, and you know it's done properly, and it's locking underneath the base plate when you can't rock the left-hand side up. If it's done wrong, it's going to come up like this. If it's done properly, it's not going to come up at all. So once that's on, now we're going to focus on the locking tabs on the right-hand side. So you can pinch them together with your hand like this, make sure they nest very well into each other, and you're going to hear a snap. That means it's locked in correctly. Put the D-ring forward, and then on the rear, we're going to do the same thing, pushing it down. You can also use a screwdriver if you can't fit your hands down there, if you don't want to get near the filter and get your hands sticky, but we're going to lock it in with our hands right now. It's that easy. And then you're going to want to grab the filter, try to pick up on it. It's not moving. We know we've done it properly. Okay, now we're going to reattach the fairings. It's one of the last parts of the job. So we want to clip the front first in a rearward motion, and as we drop the rear end down like that, we know we've clipped that in, and then squeeze here and it pops in, fairings on. Okay guys, putting on the seat signifies that we are done with this install. As you can see, it's really a piece of cake. You can do it with the stock tools that come with your KTM. So if you have any questions at all about mapping, all you have to do is either give us a call, read the website, or read the back of the instructions on this. There's some notes in there as well. So if you really want to open up the full potential of this bike, full mapping is recommended, and we can turn this thing into a serious beast or whatever you want to get out of it. So please subscribe to the video. That helps us. I'm supposed to tell you that because I see it on all the other videos. So subscribe. It's a button somewhere over there. Just hit it. Just take a second, hit it. Okay, now go ride.